So you know what, heading into this episode of SmackDown, a lot of people, for the most part, all of us were kind of hoping and expecting the return of AJ Lee following the teases, not only at Clash in Paris, but on Monday Night Raw. Obviously, they were in Chicago tonight, CM Punk's hometown, and you kind of had to know that they had something up their sleeves because, listen, if they had anybody else come out there in the position that AJ Lee was in, if it was a Bailey, if it was a Rhea Ripley, if it was literally anybody else, this shit wouldn't have worked. And especially when you consider that you have Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch out there essentially fucking over CM Punk every chance that they get. I mean, it just makes common sense that eventually we would lead to the inevitable sort of conclusion here, and that is the official return of AJ Lee back to the WWE. A lot of people have asked for it. A lot of people have, openly clamored for the fact of a potential AJ Lee return. And tonight, there was almost like a 90% assurance that it was going to happen. But again, there was that 10% that you possibly don't know whether or not it was actually going to happen until it actually did happen. But tonight, to my excitement and the excitement of most of everybody that was present in the Chicago All-State Arena, we got the return of AJ Lee. So to back it up here real quick, the main event sort of segment, the main event sort of spot here that we ended off the show was with Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins was all the way high up, almost in the fans position, and he introduced Becky Lynch out to come out to the ring. Becky Lynch here was literally the most nuclear heel heat of a wrestler reaction that you could have received, especially in Chicago. She put down the Chicago sports teams. She put down Chicago as a whole in itself, and eventually she gets interrupted by CM Punk, of course. CM Punk comes out there cutting a promo on her and says that, if she thinks that CM Punk came here alone and can't just call somebody like one of his sisters, like Bailey, like the Eradicator, Rhea Ripley, to come out here and to deal with the situation, then she's out of her mind. And eventually we get the whole thing where Becky is slapping the hell once again out of CM Punk, motorboating him again for some weird reason. But she is continuously just slapping the fuck out of this guy, right? And CM Punk steps out of the ring, goes out of the ring, picks up the mic one last time and says, "Hey, listen, Becky, I would never put my hands on a woman, but thankfully I have somebody who is willing to do that for me." And out comes AJ Lee, and I shit you not, I believe that everybody collectively all around the world fucking lit up with the whole "Let's Light It Up" intro. And she came out here, massive reaction, massive pop, of course, in Chicago, Illinois. She came out here and fucking like time stood still here with AJ Lee as she made her return after I think a decade of not being physically in a WWE ring, right? She hasn't physically been in a wrestling ring for the WWE in about a decade or so. She came out here, she attacked Becky Lynch, she smacked her around for a little bit, and she had stood tall at the end with CM Punk, as both Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins end up retreating towards the back. And now it's kind of safe to assume that we're going to get this match, mixed tag team match at WrestlePalooza. Unofficially confirmed this match, Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch against CM Punk and AJ Lee. Number one, I'm just really excited that we finally got the return of AJ Lee. I feel like we've been kind of asking for this ever since Punk returned back to WWE about 2 or 3 years ago. We've been kind of asking for this. When is this going to happen? Is she going to appear, let's say, at the Royal Rumble? Let's say she's going to appear some other spot, possibly at WrestleMania. But I think that like now it actually really makes sense for her to come back, because why would she just come back for the Royal Rumble and that's not going to really mean anything in the long term of things? But now this is a blood feud, so to speak. This is a personal rivalry at this point with Seth, Becky, AJ, and CM Punk. Obviously this kind of fits into the whole sort of rivalry that they've been telling for the last year, 2 years, ever since Punk and Seth really started off their feud. And I don't know about you guys, but this is the most interested that I've been in a Seth Rollins sort of feud in a long time, because the vision, like I said before, they're not bad, they're just sometimes boring at this point. And I feel like having something like this happen, a shot in the arm, so to speak, with AJ Lee making her return, is really something that was needed. And I know that this going forward is possibly going to kickstart a potential, comeback run for AJ Lee, which I'm all for. I think AJ Lee, as a wrestler, physically, she still has a lot to give, and she's obviously, this is a whole new generation that hasn't really, I guess, been in the ring or even in the same company as AJ Lee. Like, imagine AJ Lee against a Rhea Ripley, AJ Lee against a Roxanne Perez. The list goes on, essentially. But I'm really glad to see AJ Lee come back. And nonetheless, here on my birthday here, it was a nice sort of birthday gift here to have AJ Lee make her return once again here in Chicago, Illinois. And elsewhere on the show, we had John Cena kick off his official last sort of appearance here on SmackDown. At this point, as it stands, John Cena, this is his last appearance on SmackDown in the Allstate Arena in Chicago, Illinois. And coincidentally enough, this is the same arena that he debuted way back in SmackDown 2002 against Kurt Angle, and he mentioned that here in his promo. And really watching this promo, it kind of, it was surreal in a sense, because this crowd, go back to 2011 Money in the Bank against CM Punk, this crowd was eating John Cena alive. And now fast forward, some 14 years later, 2025, this crowd is actively chanting, "Thank you, John Cena." And it's kind of surreal how fast all this has gone, as far as the retirement run and as far as Cena as a whole this year. And it kind of really brings a tear to your eye, especially if you're a big Cena fan like I was growing up, how this crowd who was super anti-Cena now is super pro-Cena. And of course, you could visibly see as well, Cena was shaken and taken aback by the fact of this, because he even mentioned it, I think, once or twice in his promo, was the fact of how the crowds really, for the longest time, really weren't rocking with him, right? They were super against him, super anti-Cena. But now, obviously, everywhere he goes, every arena, every stadium, anywhere he goes, it's "Thank you, Cena." So we have this match officially set up because Sami Zayn came out and challenged John Cena to a US Championship match, because, rewind 10 years ago, Sami Zayn answered one of John Cena's open challenges for the US Championship, and now Sami Zayn wants to repay the favor, so to speak, for John Cena. And we get this match, and all throughout the match we have sort of callbacks to numerous guys here. We had an angle slam, we had a GTS by Cena, we had Edge, the whole sort of spear, the setup to the spear. People like Michael Cole were claiming that it was, a callback to Roman Reigns. I don't know what fucking match he was watching, but I was watching this match, and it was a literal callback to Edge, one of John Cena's greatest fucking rivals ever in his entire career. But you kind of had to know that we weren't going to get a winner during this match, because Sami Zayn just won the championship. He's not going to lose the championship this fucking quick. John Cena isn't going to win the championship, and he isn't going to take a clean loss against Sami Zayn. So you had to know that there was something up their sleeves here tonight, and they brought out Brock Lesnar. He came out here, F5'd Sami Zayn, F5'd John Cena. Then in the back, in the gorilla position, he directly stares into the camera and tells John Cena, "Hey, at WrestlePalooza, I'll see you, bitch." And essentially, that's how this match gets made. John Cena against Brock Lesnar at WrestlePalooza made official. I've seen out there that they want to add a stipulation for this match. I think the best stipulation that you could add for this match, and maybe this has already been rumored, but the best stipulation that you could add for this match is a last man standing match, because it kind of just fits with both Brock and Cena, how those two guys kind of never want to stay down, always try to stay in the fight. So I feel like if you make this a last man standing match, it's just gonna add more to their match, and it can kind of mask the whole sort of Cena, aging factor, as far as, his in-ring ability, which lately he's had some of his better matches this entire run. But those were the two main talking points here tonight on SmackDown. We also had a kind of nothing match here between Aleister Black and Damian Priest. Aleister got the win. To me, I didn't really care too much about this match. It was simply just there to fill time, in my opinion. And one last thing before I end off the video here, I was kind of wondering, because they're building for a Randy Drew match, and I was kind of wondering, whether we get this at WrestlePalooza or whether we get this some other time, because the eventual match is going to be Cody and Drew. But tonight we had it officially announced that next week they're going to blow off the Drew Randy match, and that's just going to happen next week. So I'm assuming that Cody is possibly going to be back in time for WrestlePalooza, giving Drew the championship match, in which case I think Cody ends up retaining. They could pull a wild card and have Drew capture the championship, first ESPN pay-per-view, PLE, so to speak. So they might want to do something shocking for that. But post your comments down below. Let me know what you thought of SmackDown here tonight from Chicago, Illinois. The return of AJ Lee, John Cena's final SmackDown appearance, and the confirmation of John Cena against Brock Lesnar here tonight from the Allstate Arena in Chicago. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you thought of tonight's episode of SmackDown. And until next time, I will see you all on the next one.